He a skeptical tycoon, blinded by betrayals, who valued efficiency above all else. She, a humble cleaning lady who considered herself invisible, but possessed a rare honesty. Amidst the tension of the office, she witnessed a secret. When questioned, fearing the consequences, she exclaimed, "Mr. Vance, I'm just a cleaning lady. What's my word worth here?" But even in belittling herself, she revealed the truth. The force of her honesty struck Nicholas like lightning. He fell for her honesty. Watch this story to the end. You'll be surprised by this story. If you like love stories, romance, subscribe to this channel, leave your comment. We post videos like this every day. Moving on. The whir of the vacuum cleaners blended with the echo of high heels on the marble floors of Vance Tech, even at 11 at night. Sofia Ferreira adjusted her navy blue uniform and sighed, watching the last administrative staff leave via the elevators. Finally, the 35th floor was quiet, and she could start her real work. At 26, Sofia had lost count of how many nights she had spent cleaning those luxurious offices. Every glass desk, every imported vase, every Persian rug received her meticulous attention. Not out of professional vanity, but out of necessity. Her job with the outsourced cleaning company was all that stood between her family and eviction from their apartment in Queensbridge. 2 more hours, and I can go home, she muttered, pushing her cleaning cart down the hallway. The 2-room apartment she shared with her 15-year-old twin brothers and diabetic mother awaited her. Rafael and Ricardo needed new school uniforms, and Mrs. Ferreira's insulin was getting too expensive. 3 floors above, Nicholas Vance remained hunched over financial reports in his panoramic office. At 38, he had built a tech empire that rivaled the largest multinationals, but the price of success was a loneliness that the cold marble of his office only intensified. The city lights twinkled below like distant stars, as unattainable as the trust he had lost years ago. The betrayal by Mariana, his ex-fiancée, still echoed in his memory. She had sold privileged company information to a competitor, destroying not only their relationship, but also Nicholas's ability to trust anyone. Since then, relationships were transactions, people were resources, and feelings were dangerous vulnerabilities. The intercom buzzed, interrupting his thoughts. "Mr. Vance," the night security guard's voice echoed, "we have a situation here on the 28th floor. The cleaning lady found something strange." Nicholas frowned. "What kind of strange thing?" "Rodriguez?" "You'd better come down and see, sir. It seems important." 15 minutes later, Nicholas stepped onto the 28th floor, where Sofia stood before the desk of Gus Mendez, the company's CFO. She held an open envelope, and her face was pale under the fluorescent light. "What happened here?" Nicholas asked, his voice carrying the authority that intimidated seasoned executives. Sofia turned, and for a moment, their eyes met. She had seen Nicholas Vance a few times in the hallways, always impeccable in his Italian suits, always surrounded by aides. To her, he was a distant, almost mythical figure. To him, she was just another invisible employee who kept the building running. I was cleaning Mr. Mendez's desk," Sofia stammered, "and this envelope was half hidden behind the computer. When I pulled it to clean, it fell and opened." Nicholas held out his hand. "Give it to me." Sofia hesitated. Inside the envelope were photographs and documents she didn't fully understand, but she knew they shouldn't be there. They were papers from the competition, contracts mentioning exorbitant amounts and future dates. Even without a college education, she recognized something wrong when she saw it. "Mr. Vance," she said, her voice trembling, "I think Mr. Mendez is what?" Nicholas approached, and Sofia smelled his expensive cologne, a blend of wood and spices that contrasted brutally with the plain soap she used. "I shouldn't be seeing this," she whispered. "I'm just the cleaning lady. Who's going to believe me?" But it was too late. Nicholas had seen enough in the photographs to understand that Gus Mendez, his trusted CFO for 10 years, was selling trade secrets to Apex Technologies, his biggest rival. The contracts were dated for next week, just when Vance Tech was set to announce its revolutionary new product. "Did you see anything else?" Nicholas asked, his voice lower, more dangerous. Sophia shook her head, but then she remembered. "Last week I saw Mr. Mendez here very late, making a video call. He was talking about timelines and delivery on schedule. I thought it was strange because he seemed nervous, but you're just the cleaning lady," Nicholas finished, and there was something different in his voice now. Not disdain, but an intense curiosity. Sophia nodded, preparing to be dismissed. After all, she had fulfilled her accidental role. Now she would return to her invisibility, and Nicholas would handle it the way powerful men handle betrayals. But Nicholas didn't dismiss her. Instead, he continued to look at her, as if seeing her for the first time. There was something in her honesty, in the way she had handed over evidence she could have ignored, in the way she belittled herself despite having done the right thing, that awakened something in him that he thought had died years ago. "What's your name?" he asked. Sophia Ferreira, sir." "Sophia," he repeated, testing the name. "You saved my company tonight." She blinked, confused. "I was just doing my job, Mr. Vance." "No," Nicholas said, pocketing the envelope in his jacket. "You did much more than that." The next morning, Sophia arrived at work, hoping everything would go back to normal. The encounter with Nicholas Vance had been an accident, a moment outside of reality that she preferred to forget. Men like him didn't notice women like her, and it was better that way. She had too many responsibilities to allow herself impossible fantasies. But when she arrived at the outsourced employee's locker room, Carla, her co-worker, was waiting for her with wide eyes. "Sophia, you need to go up to the 38th floor," Carla said, almost whispering. Nicholas Vance himself asked, "For you to go up there?" "That's impossible," Sophia shook her head. "He doesn't even know my name." "Yes, he does. He specifically asked for Sophia Ferreira from the night cleaning crew." Sophia's heart raced. Maybe he wanted her to testify against Gus Mendez. Or, worse, maybe he thought she was involved in the scheme. People like Nicholas Vance didn't summon people like her for good news. The 38th floor was uncharted territory. Sophia had never cleaned there. It was the executive floor, reserved only for the most important executives. When the elevator doors opened, she found herself in a world of white marble, modern art, and a breathtaking panoramic view of New York City. "Miss Ferreira?" An elegant secretary approached. "Mr. Vance is expecting you." Sophia was led down a corridor that resembled a museum gallery to a double door made of dark wood. When she entered, Nicholas was standing by the window contemplating the city. Even from behind, he radiated power and control. "Sophia," he said without turning around, "thank you for coming." "Mr. Vance, if this is about last night, I promise I won't tell anyone." "Sit down," he interrupted, finally turning around. Today, without the tension of discovering the betrayal, Sophia could truly see him. His dark eyes were piercing, almost hypnotic, and there was something in them that made her feel he saw beyond appearances. "Gus Mendez was fired this morning, thanks to you." Sophia sat on the edge of the leather chair, uncomfortable. "I only found those papers by accident." "It was more than an accident," Nicholas approached, leaning on the desk. "You could have pretended you saw nothing. You could have kept the evidence to yourself, tried to blackmail me, but you didn't." "I would never do that," Sophia said, genuinely offended. "I know," Nicholas replied, and there was something in his voice that made Sophia look at him more closely. "That's why I'm offering you a new job." Sophia blinked. "Sir, I need someone I can trust, Someone who works directly with me, who has access to confidential information, someone whose integrity I've seen proven. But I don't have the qualifications for that, Sophia protested. I only finished high school. I've been working as a cleaning lady for 5 years. You have something more valuable than any degree, Nicholas said, his eyes fixed on hers. Honesty. For a moment, silence hung between them. Sophia felt her heart beating erratically. There was something about the way he looked at her that awakened sensations she shouldn't be feeling. Nicholas Vance was handsome, powerful, sophisticated. Everything she wasn't. And he was offering an opportunity that would change her life. What exactly would the job be? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Personal assistant. You would work directly with me, manage my schedule, have access to all my appointments and meetings. The salary would be 15 times what you currently earn. Sophia swallowed hard. 15 times. It would be enough to move out of Queensbridge, enroll the twins in a private school, and pay for better health insurance for her mother. I need to think, she said. Nicholas frowned, clearly not accustomed to people who didn't immediately accept his offers. Why are you hesitating? Sophia stood up, feeling small before him. Because people like you don't do favors for people like me without wanting something in return. And I don't know what you want from me. The brutal honesty of the answer hit Nicholas like a punch to the gut. He had expected gratitude, perhaps even flattery. Instead, he received an intelligent distrust that completely disarmed him. Sophia, he said, his voice lower, what I want is to have someone by my side whom I can trust completely. I haven't felt that way about anyone in a long time. There was a vulnerability in his words that made Sophia stop at the door. She turned and saw something in his eyes that she recognized. Loneliness. The same loneliness she felt every night, cleaning empty offices while the city slept. 1 week, she said impulsively. Give me 1 week to think. Nicholas nodded. 1 week. When Sophia left, Nicholas stared at the closed door for long minutes. He couldn't understand what was happening to him. Sophia Ferreira was everything. He normally avoided, simple, unpretentious, from a completely different social class than his. But there was something about her that intrigued him deeply. Maybe it was the way she didn't bow down before him, or how her honesty was so natural that it was disconcerting. Or maybe it was simply the fact that for the first time in years, someone had questioned him without wanting anything in return. 3 days later, Sophia still hadn't given an answer. Nicholas found himself looking for her in the hallways, hoping to see her with her cleaning cart. It was ridiculous, he knew, but he couldn't stop thinking about her. That's when he received the call that would change everything. Mr. Vance, the head of security's voice was tense. We have a problem. Sophia Ferreira is in the hospital. Nicholas found Sophia at New York Presbyterian Hospital, in a bed in a shared room in the emergency wing. She was awake, but pale, with a bandage on her forehead and her left arm immobilized. When she saw him enter, her eyes widened in surprise. Mr. Vance, how did you know I was here? Nicholas pulled a plastic chair closer to the bed, ignoring the curious glances of the other patients. My head of security has contacts in the police. They told me you were mugged, leaving the subway. Sophia looked away, embarrassed. You didn't need to come all the way here. I'm already fine. 3 stitches to the head and a broken arm isn't fine, Nicholas retorted, noticing how she was trying to hide the pain. What exactly happened? 2 men approached me as I was. Leaving the 40th Saint Station, they wanted my purse. Sophia instinctively touched the bandage. I tried to run, but one of them pushed me against the wall. Nicholas felt a rage he hadn't experienced in a long time. What did they take? The money I had saved to buy my mother's medicine this month, Sophia said, and her voice faltered. It wasn't much, but how much? Nicholas asked, already taking his wallet out of his pocket. No, Sophia said firmly, holding his arm with her good hand. I don't want your pity. Her touch sent an electric shock up Nicholas's arm. It was just the small, calloused hand of an injured woman, but there was something about that contact that deeply disturbed him. It's not pity, he said, his voice hoarser. It's responsibility. What do you mean? Nicholas hesitated. He hadn't meant to say that, but the words came out before he could stop them. If you were already working for me, this wouldn't have happened. You'd have a car with a driver. You wouldn't need to walk alone through the subway at night. Sophia studied his face. There was something there she couldn't decipher, an intensity that went beyond professional concern. Why are you doing this? She asked softly. Why do you care what happens to me? The question caught Nicholas off guard. He didn't know the answer himself. For 3 days, Sophia had occupied his thoughts in a way he couldn't explain. He had caught himself imagining what it would be like to work with her, to see her every day, to hear her honest voice cutting through the lies that permeated his corporate world. He began, but he was interrupted by the arrival of 2 teenagers who burst into the room. Sophia! One of the boys, thin and tall, ran to the bed. The nurse said you were okay, but... Rafael, Ricardo, you shouldn't be here. Sophia protested, but her eyes sparkled at the sight of her twin brothers. How did you get to the hospital? We took 2 buses and the subway, Ricardo, the other twin, replied. When the police called home, Mom almost fainted. Nicholas observed the interaction between the 3 siblings, noting how Sophia automatically assumed the protective role, even injured in a hospital bed. There was a tenderness there that he had forgotten existed. This is Mr. Vance, Sophia said hesitantly. My boss. The twins looked at Nicholas with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. At 15, they had already learned to be careful with rich people who appeared in the lives of poor people. You guys are identical, Nicholas commented, trying to break the ice. Only on the outside, Rafael replied. I'm the smart one. Liar, Ricardo retorted. He's just better at math. I'm better at English. For the first time in days, Sophia smiled genuinely. They want to study engineering and journalism, respectively. They dream too big for our reality. Dreaming big isn't the problem, Nicholas said, surprising everyone, including himself. The problem is not having the means to achieve your dreams. There was a heavy silence. The twins exchanged glances. Sophia bit her lip, and Nicholas realized that he had revealed more about himself than he intended. Did you dream big when you were young too, sir? Rafael asked, always the more direct of the two. Nicholas felt something clench in his chest. Memories he kept locked away began to stir. I dreamed of building a company that would change the world of technology, he said slowly. But I also dreamed of having a family that would support me on that journey. And did you succeed? Ricardo asked. The company, yes, Nicholas replied, avoiding Sophia's gaze. The family, that was more complicated. Sophia noticed the shadow that passed over Nicholas's eyes. There was pain there, an old wound that he carried alone. Without thinking, she reached out and touched his hand again. Sometimes the families we build are more important than the ones we're born into, she said softly. Nicholas looked at her hand on his. Sophia didn't know it, but she had touched exactly the deepest wound in his life. His parents had died when he was 22 in a car accident shortly before he launched his first startup. He had built his empire alone, but the emptiness of not having anyone to share his victories consumed him silently. Sophia, he said, his voice almost a whisper, take the job. It was no longer a professional offer. It was a personal request, laden with a need he couldn't hide. Sophia looked at her brothers, who were watching her intently. She saw the hope in their eyes, the same hope that she felt growing in her chest despite all her fears. "Okay," she said finally. "I accept." Nicholas closed his eyes for a moment, feeling a relief he hadn't expected. When he opened them, he found Sophia smiling at him, and for the first time in years, he felt that maybe he wasn't completely alone in the world. But neither Nicholas nor Sophia knew that 3 floors above, Gus Mendez was being questioned by the FBI, and that the investigations into industrial espionage were just beginning. Sofia Ferreira's name had been mentioned as a key witness, and very powerful people already knew of her existence. 3 weeks later, Sophia had adapted to her new routine as Nicholas's personal assistant. His office on the 38th floor had become her second home, and she discovered that she had a natural aptitude for organizing the chaotic life of a CEO. But what surprised her most was how Nicholas had begun to trust her with matters that went far beyond the professional. It was a rainy Thursday when everything changed. Nicholas was in a video conference with Japanese investors when Sophia noticed something strange. A man in a dark suit had passed by the hallway 3 times in the last hour, always looking in the direction of Nicholas's office. When she got up to investigate, the man disappeared. "Mr. Vance," she whispered when the meeting ended, "there's someone strange lurking out here." Nicholas frowned. Since the Gus Mendez case, he had tightened security, but he still felt vulnerable. The FBI investigation was deepening, and he knew there were more people involved in the industrial espionage scheme. That's when the phone rang. "Nicholas Vance," he answered. "Mr. Vance, this is Agent Carter from the FBI. We need you to come to the office immediately. We have information that there may be an assassination attempt on your life today." Nicholas's blood ran cold. Assassination? Gus Mendez has decided to cooperate with the investigation. He revealed that Apex Technologies wasn't just buying information, but planning to eliminate you, to take control of Vance Tech through a hostile takeover after your death. Sophia, who had overheard the conversation, paled. "Nicholas, we're sending a police escort," the agent continued. "Do not leave the building until they arrive." Nicholas hung up the phone, but before he could fully process the information, the lights went out. The entire building plunged into darkness. "Emergency system activated," a mechanical voice announced. "Please remain calm and await instructions." Sophia instinctively moved closer to Nicholas. In the dim light of the emergency lights, she could see the tension on his face. "This isn't a coincidence," he muttered. "They cut the power to disable the security systems." The sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway. They weren't the heavy footsteps of the building's security guards, but something more furtive, more calculated. "We have to get out of here," Nicholas whispered, taking Sophia's hand. "But the police said to wait." "The police won't arrive in time." Nicholas guided Sophia to a side door in his office that she had never noticed. Behind it was a private emergency staircase that connected directly to the underground parking garage. "How did you know about this passage?" Sophia asked as they descended the steps in the dark. "Executive paranoia," Nicholas replied, but his voice was tense. "I always have escape routes planned." They reached the parking garage when they heard voices above. Someone had broken into Nicholas's office. "The car," Nicholas murmured, pulling Sophia toward his black BMW. But as they approached, they saw that the tires had been slashed. "They thought of everything," Sophia whispered, panic beginning to set in. Nicholas looked around desperately. The parking garage was a maze of concrete pillars and parked cars. There were many places to hide, but also many places from which they could be ambushed. That's when they heard the elevator opening. "This way!" Nicholas pulled Sophia behind a van, but she stumbled, twisting the ankle that was still tender from the mugging. "I can't run," she groaned, leaning on him. Nicholas looked at Sophia, then at the elevator from which two armed men emerged. There was no time to think, only to act. Without warning, he scooped her up into his arms and ran in the opposite direction, looking for an exit. Sophia wrapped her arms around his neck, feeling the tense muscles under his suit, his racing heart beating against her chest. "There," she whispered, pointing to a door with the emergency exit sign. Nicholas ran toward the door, but it was locked. Behind them, the footsteps of the pursuers echoed closer and closer. "Nicholas Vance," a voice shouted, "there's no point in running. We just want to talk." "Talking doesn't require guns," Nicholas murmured, still holding Sophia in his arms. That's when she noticed something. "Nicholas, look there." A small ventilation window was open near the ceiling. It was small, but maybe it was possible to get through it. "Can you put me up there?" Sophia asked. "Sophia, no. I'm smaller. I can fit. On the other side, it should lead to the street." "I'll call the police." Nicholas looked her in the eyes. In the dim light of the parking garage, he saw a courage he didn't expect to find. Sophia was willing to risk herself for him. "It's too dangerous," he whispered. "More dangerous than staying here?" He knew she was right. Reluctantly, he put her down and interlaced his hands to make a base for her to climb on. "When you get outrun," he said, "don't look back, don't wait for me. Just run and call for help." Sophia looked at him, and at that moment, something changed between them. It was no longer just an employee helping her boss or a rich man protecting a vulnerable woman. It was something much deeper and more dangerous. "I'll come back for you," she promised, touching his face. "Sophia, promise you'll hide until I get back with help?" Nicholas nodded, knowing it was a lie. He wouldn't let her take risks alone. Sophia climbed onto the makeshift base he made with his hands, reached the window, and squeezed through it. On the other side, she fell into a side alley of the building, hurting her knee but free. As she ran toward the main street, her heart was racing. It wasn't just fear for her own safety, but a desperate worry for Nicholas that surprised her with its intensity. She had fallen in love with him. The realization hit her like lightning as she dialed 911. It wasn't gratitude, it wasn't professional admiration. It was love, pure and overwhelming, for a man who was in mortal danger. And when she heard the sound of gunshots coming from the building, Sophia knew that her life had changed forever. It no longer mattered the social differences, the obstacles, or how impossible that love seemed. She loved Nicholas Vance, and she would do anything to save him. The police arrived 15 minutes later, but to Sophia, it felt like hours. When they were finally able to enter the building, they found Nicholas wounded, but alive, hidden behind a pillar in the parking garage. The two armed men had fled when they heard the sirens. At the hospital, while the doctors were tending to the bullet wound in Nicholas's shoulder, Sophia didn't leave his side. She held his hand, whispered words of encouragement, and when he finally woke up from the anesthesia, the first thing he saw were her eyes, red from crying. "You came back," he murmured, squeezing her hand. "I promised I would come back," Sophia replied, trying to smile through her tears. It was at that moment, with Nicholas vulnerable in the hospital bed and Sophia watching over his sleep, that they both knew they had crossed an irreversible line. What they felt for each other during those hours of terror was no longer something they could ignore or rationalize. 2 weeks later, Nicholas was back at work, but everything had changed. The dynamic between him and Sophia was charged with a tension they both tried to deny. Glances that lasted longer than necessary, accidental touches that sent electric shocks, conversations that stopped abruptly when others entered the room. It was a Friday night when it finally happened. Sophia was organizing files in the office when a violent thunderstorm began. Nicholas had dismissed the driver, planning to work late, but when he saw Sophia still there at 9 at night, he insisted she not leave in that rain. I'm not going to let you take 2 buses and the subway in this storm, he said. I'll take you home. Nicholas, you don't have to. Yes, I do. And stop treating me like Mr. Vance when we're alone. His name sounded different on her lips. More intimate, more dangerous. During the drive to Queensbridge, they talked about everything and nothing. Nicholas asked about her twin brothers, who had managed to get scholarships to a prep course for college. Sophia told about her mother, whose diabetes was being better controlled with the new medications her salary allowed her to buy. When they arrived at the housing project where Sophia lived, the rain had subsided, but neither of them made any mention of getting out of the car. Sophia, Nicholas said softly, turning to her in the driver's seat. What happened that night? What I felt when I thought I could lose you. Don't say it, Sophia interrupted, but her voice was weak. Please, don't say it. Why not? Because we can't, she whispered. You know we can't. Give me one reason that makes sense. Sophia looked out the window, seeing the dim lights of the homes where people like her lived their simple lives. Look around you, Nicholas. This is my world. 2-room apartment, overdue bills, crowded buses every day. Your world is a penthouse, imported cars, dinners at restaurants that cost more than my salary for a month. And that matters. For me, no, she confessed, finally looking at him. But it will matter to everyone around you. Your reputation, your company, your business partners. Nicholas approached, touching her face gently. Sophia, Nicholas, don't. But it was too late. He kissed her, and years of loneliness, fear, and distrust melted away in that moment. Sophia tried to resist for a second, but then surrendered, wrapping her arms around his neck. When they broke apart, they both knew they had changed everything. No one can know, Sophia said, still breathless. At least, not yet. Nicholas agreed, although every fiber of his being wanted to shout to the world that he loved this extraordinary woman. During the following weeks, they maintained a secret relationship that consumed them. Stolen encounters after work, discreet messages, glances loaded with meaning during meetings. Sophia continued living in Queensbridge, insisting on keeping her previous life intact, but her nights belonged to Nicholas. It was Ricardo, the more observant of the twins, who first noticed the change in his sister. Sophia, you're different, he said one Saturday morning as she prepared coffee, happier but also more nervous. I'm the same, she lied, but she knew she couldn't completely hide the transformation that love had wrought in her. The problem was that others had also begun to notice. Isabella Vance Montenegro, Nicholas's cousin and a shareholder in the company, had always been a perceptive woman. When she began to notice how her cousin's simple assistant seemed to wield an unusual influence over him, she decided to investigate. It was a Tuesday when Isabella appeared in Nicholas's office unannounced, accompanied by Mark Thompson, one of Vance Tech's main investors. Nicholas, darling, Isabella said, kissing her cousin's cheeks. We need to talk about the board meeting next week. Sophia, who was organizing documents, immediately felt the tension in the air. Isabella looked her up and down with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. This must be your new assistant, Isabella said. Sophia, isn't it? I've heard so much about you. Mrs. Vance Montenegro, Sophia replied politely, but something in the woman's tone put her on alert. Mark, do you know Sofia Ferreira? She was instrumental in uncovering Gus Mendez's espionage scheme. Mark studied Sophia with excessive interest. Ah, yes, the famous witness. What an interesting coincidence that a cleaning lady found exactly the evidence we needed, don't you think? The comment was clearly a malicious insinuation. Nicholas stood up, his voice loaded with authority. Sophia did her job with integrity. Thanks to her, we saved the company. Oh, I don't doubt it, Isabella smiled. She seems like a very dedicated young woman. After the visitors left, Sophia was visibly shaken. "They suspect something," she said. "Suspect what? That you're competent at your job?" "Nicholas, don't be naive. She was assessing me as a threat." Nicholas wanted to deny it, but he knew Sophia was right. Isabella had always been protective of the family, business, and anyone who exerted influence over him would be viewed with suspicion. What they didn't know was that Isabella had already hired a private investigator to find out everything about Sofia Ferreira. And what the investigator was about to find would change everything. That same night, as Sophia returned home, a black car followed her to the subway station. A man in sunglasses took several photos of her entering the train and then made a call. "I confirm," he said. "It's her. The same Sofia Ferreira who was working as a cleaning lady when she discovered the documents. Very convenient, don't you? And think, I'm going to dig deeper into her past. Something tells me this honesty story may have some interesting holes." The net was closing around Sophia and Nicholas, and they had no idea that their lives were about to be turned upside down. Isabella's investigator didn't take long to find what he was looking for. The report reached her hands one Monday morning, and the smile that formed on her lips was as cold as ice. Sophia was in the office organizing Nicholas's schedule when the intercom buzzed. "Mr. Vance," the secretary announced. "Mrs. Vance Montenegro is here and says it's urgent." Nicholas frowned. Isabella rarely appeared without warning, and never early in the morning. "Send her in." Isabella entered accompanied by two men Sophia didn't recognize. One was the private investigator, the other appeared to be a lawyer. "Nicholas, darling," Isabella said, but her tone was icy. "We need to talk, alone." Nicholas looked at Sophia. "Anything you have to say can be said in front of Sophia. I don't think she'll want to stay." Isabella smiled maliciously. "Sophia, dear, could you tell us about your relationship with Ricky Silva?" Sophia felt the blood run cold in her veins. Ricky Silva, a name she had tried to forget for the past 3 years. Automatically, her hand went to her wrist, where a small, almost imperceptible scar still marked her skin. I don't know what you're talking about," Sophia stammered, but her paleness gave her away. "No?" Isabella opened a folder and spread photographs on Nicholas's desk. "These photos are from 3 years ago. You and Ricky Silva, a known drug dealer from Queensbridge, in various compromising situations." Nicholas looked at the photographs and felt his world crumble. In the images, a younger Sophia appeared embraced with a dangerous-looking man, entering and leaving a house that clearly wasn't a place for honest people. "Sophia." Nicholas's voice was unrecognizable. "What is this?" Sophia looked at the photos, and then at Nicholas's eyes. She saw the distrust growing there, the same distrust he had felt for Mariana, for all the people who had betrayed him in the past. "Nicholas, I can explain." "Can you really?" Isabella interrupted. "Can you explain how a drug dealer's girlfriend got a job at the cleaning company that services our building? How she got access to the offices at night? How, by pure coincidence, she found exactly the evidence we needed against Gus Mendez? Are you implying that Sophia began, but her voice faltered. "I'm saying it clearly," Isabella continued, relentless. "You were planted here, probably by the same competitors. Who bought Gus? The discovery of the documents was staged. You gained my cousin's trust to have privileged access to confidential information." "That's a lie," Sophia exploded, but tears were already streaming down her face. "Nicholas, you know..." "That's a lie." Nicholas looked at her, and Sophia saw something die in his eyes. The trust that had taken months to build was crumbling in seconds. "How can I know?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. "How can I know anything about you if you never told me about your past with a drug dealer?" "Because I was ashamed," Sophia shouted, "because I knew you'd react exactly like this." Does shame justify lying? I never lied to you. Omitting. The truth is lying, Sophia. The silence that followed was deafening. Isabella watched the scene with satisfaction, the investigator took notes, and the lawyer prepared documents. There's more, Isabella said coldly. Ricky Silva was arrested 2 years ago for international drug trafficking. Not just drugs, Nicholas. He sold industrial secrets. And our dear Sophia was his girlfriend at the time. I broke up with him as soon as I found out what he was doing. Sophia defended herself desperately. That's why he assaulted me. That's why I have this scar on my wrist. I reported him to the police. Very convenient, Isabella smiled. A lover's quarrel that turned into a denunciation. Or maybe a plan so you could come out clean when everything fell apart. Nicholas stood up, turning his back on Sophia. Get out. Nicholas, please. Get out, he shouted, turning to her with eyes Sophia had never seen before. They were the eyes of a man who had been betrayed so many times that he could no longer distinguish between truth and lies. Get out of my company, get out of my life. Sophia staggered as if she had been punched. You don't believe me. How can I believe you? You hid a fundamental part of your past. How can I know that everything we've experienced wasn't staged? Because you know me, Sophia pleaded. You know my heart. I thought I did, Nicholas replied, and his voice was broken. But I was wrong before. I may be wrong again. Sophia looked around the room. Isabella smiled triumphantly. The two men watched her as if she were a criminal, and Nicholas looked at her as if she were a stranger. Okay, Sophia said, her voice now firm despite the tears. If that's what you think of me after everything we've been through together, then you really don't know me. She walked to the door, but stopped before leaving. For your information, Ricky beat me because he found out that I had found evidence of his illegal activities and was going to report him. I loved him, but I chose to do the right thing, even knowing it would cost me dearly, just like I chose to do the right thing when I found Gus Mendez's documents. Sophia looked directly at Nicholas. But it seems that for men like you, our past defines who we are forever. It doesn't matter who we become, it doesn't matter what we do to change. Once poor and involved with the wrong person, always suspect. She opened the door, but had one last thing to say. I truly loved you, Nicholas, and that's the only thing in this room that wasn't fake. After Sophia left, slamming the door, silence dominated the office. Nicholas stood by the window, his hands trembling, trying to process everything that had happened. You did the right thing, Isabella said. She was dangerous. But Nicholas didn't answer. Something inside him screamed that he had made the biggest mistake of his life. Sophia's last words echoed in his mind. I truly loved you. At that moment, he realized that he loved her too. And maybe it was too late. Sophia descended the stairs of the building because she couldn't bear to wait for the elevator. With each step, her heart broke a little more. When she reached the street, the world seemed different, colder, crueler. She had lost not only her job and the man she loved, but also the chance for a better life for her family. The twins would have to leave the prep course. Her mother would return to the cheaper, less effective medications. But what hurt most was knowing that Nicholas had chosen to believe the worst about her. After everything they had shared, after all the times she had proven her loyalty and honesty, he had chosen distrust. Maybe Isabella was right about one thing. People like her didn't belong in the world of people like Nicholas. The difference wasn't just money, but trust. She had believed in their love, but he had believed in appearances. As she waited for the bus that would take her back to Queensbridge, Sophia touched the scar on her wrist. Ricky had left that mark. When she confronted him about his crimes, Nicholas had left a much deeper mark, invisible, but it would hurt forever. She was alone again, and this time she wasn't sure if she could get up. 3 weeks had passed since Sophia had left Vance Tech, and the world seemed to have lost its colors. She had returned to her job as a cleaning lady, now in a small commercial building, downtown, earning less than half of what she received as Nicholas's assistant. The twins had to leave the prep course, and Mrs. Ferreira returned to the cheaper generic medications. But Sophia was determined to rebuild her life. Every morning after her night shift, she went to the public library to study for college. If she could no longer count on luck or the generosity of others, she would count on her own determination. It was on one of those mornings, leafing through a law book, that a familiar voice called her. Sophia? She looked up and saw Carla, her former colleague from the Vance Tech cleaning crew. Her friend seemed nervous, looking around as if she feared being seen. "Carla, what are you doing here?" "Looking for you," Carla whispered, sitting in the chair next to her. "Sophia, there's something very wrong happening at the company." "I don't want to know anything related to Vance Tech," Sophia said, turning her attention back to the book. "You need to hear this," Carla insisted. "Remember Geraldo, the night security guard? He saw everything." Despite herself, Sophia was curious. "Saw what?" Carla looked around again and leaned in closer. "On the night you found Gus Mendez's documents, Geraldo saw a man leaving the 28th floor half an hour before you arrived. A man he had never seen before." Sophia frowned. "So what? It could be any employee working late." "That man was wearing a uniform from our cleaning company, but Geraldo knows all of us. And there's more. The security cameras in that hallway were turned off exactly during the period that man was there." Sophia's heart began to beat faster. "Are you implying that someone planted those documents for you to find?" Carla completed. "Geraldo was suspicious, but he didn't say anything at the time because you were promoted, and everything seemed to have worked out. But now, with this whole story of you being fired..." Sophia slammed the book shut. "Why didn't Geraldo tell this to the police?" "Because he's afraid. You know how it is, Sophia. People like us don't get involved in the troubles of important people. But when he heard you were accused of being a spy, his conscience weighed on him." Sophia stood up, her mind working quickly. If the documents had been planted, if it had all been a trap, then... "Carla, I need to talk to Geraldo. He's afraid of losing his job. Tell him I won't involve him in anything. I just need to confirm what he saw." 2 hours later, Sophia met with Geraldo at a small, discreet coffee shop far from the business district. The 50-year-old man was visibly nervous, his hands shaking as he stirred sugar into his coffee. "Miss Sophia, I didn't want to get involved in this," he began, "but you were always good to me, always said hello, asked about my family. Geraldo, tell me exactly what you saw that night." Geraldo took a deep breath. "I was doing the 11 o'clock rounds when I saw a man coming out of the elevator on the 28th floor. He was wearing our uniform, but I had never seen him before. Tall, grey hair, scar on his face." "Are you sure he didn't work for the cleaning company?" "Absolutely. I've known everyone for 10 years, and there's another thing. When I asked what he was doing there, he said he was new, that he was covering someone's sick shift, but there was no replacement marked in the logbook." Sophia felt a mixture of anger and validation. "And the cameras?" "Ah, Ms. Sophia, that was the strangest thing. When I went to review the recordings the next day, the cameras on that hallway had failed exactly from 10:30 to 11:15. What a coincidence, huh? Why didn't you tell anyone?" Geraldo lowered his head, ashamed. "Because when you were promoted to the boss's assistant, I thought it had all been for the best. And then, when they started investigating Mr. Mendez, everyone was afraid to say anything. You know how it is, Miss Sophia. Poor people don't get involved in rich people's fights." Sophia touched the man's hand gently. "Thank you for telling me this, Geraldo. You can go in peace. You won't get me into trouble, right?" "Never." After Geraldo left, Sophia was alone in the cafe, processing the information. Someone had orchestrated everything. Someone had planted the documents for her to find, knowing that her honesty would force her to hand them over to Nicholas. But why? The answer came like lightning, so that she would gain Nicholas's trust, so that he would promote her and she would have access to even more valuable information. That meant the real spy was still in the company. Sophia took the bus back home, with her mind racing. If she could prove her innocence, maybe she could win back Nicholas. But more important than that, she could prevent the real traitor from causing more damage. That night, instead of going to work, Sophia returned to the Vance Tech building. She knew all the night security guards, all the routines. She managed to enter through the parking garage using her old badge, which miraculously still worked. The 38th floor was silent and dark. Sophia used a small flashlight to guide herself, heading directly to the office that had belonged to Gus Mendez, and now belonged to his replacement. If someone had planted evidence once, they could do it again. And if she could catch the person. In the act, that's when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Sophia turned off the flashlight and hid behind a desk, her heart pounding wildly. The footsteps approached the office where she was, and a figure entered silently. In the dim light, Sophia could distinguish an elegant woman, messing with the computer files. When the person turned slightly, Sophia almost cried out in surprise. It was Isabella Vance Montenegro. Nicholas's cousin was there, alone, in the middle of the night, transferring files to a pen drive. Sophia watched in silence for several minutes, recording everything on her cell phone until Isabella finished her work and left the office. Sophia waited another 15 minutes before moving. With her heart racing, she left the building and ran home. She finally had evidence, proof that there was a traitor in the company. But when she got home and tried to play the video, she discovered that the quality was terrible due to the lack of light. It was impossible to clearly identify who the person was, much less prove that she was stealing information. Sophia threw herself on the bed, frustrated. She knew the truth, but she couldn't prove it. And even if she could, who would believe her against Isabella? Vance Montenegro? That's when an idea began to form in her mind. Dangerous, risky, but maybe it was her only chance to clear her name and protect Nicholas from the real traitor. She was going to need help, and she knew exactly who could help. Her, even if it was the last person in the world she wanted to meet again. Sophia picked up the phone and dialed a number she had memorized years ago, but never used again. "Ricky," she said when the call was answered. "It's me, Sophia. I need your help." Calling Ricky had been the most difficult decision of Sophia's life, but also the most necessary. When they met at a cafe in the suburbs 3 days later, he seemed different, thinner, with tired eyes of someone who had paid dearly for his own mistakes. "Sophia," he said, without trying to approach, "I never thought you'd call me." "Neither did I," she admitted, "but I need your help to prove my innocence." Ricky listened attentively as Sophia explained the whole situation. When she finished, he shook his head bitterly. "You've always been too good for this dirty world, Sophia, and I was an idiot for not having seen that before." "Ricky, let me talk," he interrupted. "I hurt you. I used you, and I almost destroyed your life. When you reported me, I was angry, but in prison I understood that you did the right thing. You always did the right thing." Sophia felt her eyes welling up. "Can you help me?" "I can," he confirmed. "I have contacts who can install professional surveillance equipment in the Vance Tech building. Equipment that works in the dark with high-definition audio and video." "Is that legal?" Ricky gave a sad smile. "We're trying to catch a traitor who is destroying a company and ruining your life. Sometimes justice needs a little help." 2 days later, the equipment was installed. Ricky had used his contacts to place microscopic cameras in strategic points of the 38th floor, all connected to a system that Sophia could monitor remotely from her cell phone. On the first night, nothing happened. On the second, neither. Sophia began to doubt whether Isabella would return. On the third night, at 2 in the morning, Isabella appeared at the building. Sophia, who was awake monitoring the cameras from her apartment in Queensbridge, saw everything with crystal clarity. Isabella entered the office using her own key, connected a pen drive to the computer, and began transferring files from Vance Tech's most secret project, the new artificial intelligence system that was worth billions. But this time, Sophia wasn't just recording. She had called the FBI before Isabella entered the building. "Hello, Agent Carter. It's Sophia Ferreira. I know who the real spy is at Vance Tech." 20 minutes later, Isabella was caught red-handed. The evidence was irrefutable. Videos, audios, the files on the pen drive, and a subsequent investigation revealed that she had been selling information to Apex Technologies for months, using Gus Mendez as a scapegoat. The next morning, Nicholas received the call from Agent Carter explaining the whole situation. When he learned that Sophia had been responsible for unmasking the real traitor, he felt the world collapse around him again. But this time, of relief and remorse. He ran to Queensbridge without even thinking twice. Sophia was returning from work when she saw the black BMW parked in front of her building. Her heart raced, but she forced her steps to continue firm. She wasn't going to show weakness. Nicholas got out of the car when he saw her approaching. He looked dejected, with deep, dark circles under his eyes, and his suit rumpled. "Sophia," he said, and his voice was broken. "Nicholas," she replied, stopping 10 feet away. The police told me everything. About Isabella, about how you discovered the truth, about how you saved me even after everything I did to you." Sophia crossed her arms, fighting the urge to run to him. And I'm an idiot," he said, taking a step toward her. "I'm an idiot who let the fear of betrayal blind me to the only person who has always been true to me." "Nicholas." "No," he interrupted, approaching closer. "Let me talk. You were right about everything. I judged you by your past instead of looking at who you are. I let distrust destroy the most precious thing that has ever happened in my life." Sophia felt the tears starting to flow. "You hurt me a lot." "I know," Nicholas whispered, now very close to her, "and I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to make up for that if you give me a chance. How can I trust you again? How can I know that the next time someone shows up with false evidence, you won't believe them instead of believing me?" Nicholas touched her face gently, wiping away her tears. "Because I've learned that true love isn't based on evidence or proof. It's based on the faith we have in the person we love. And I have faith in you, Sophia. I have faith in your character, in your goodness, in your honesty." "Nicholas." "I love you," he said, looking directly into her eyes. "Not as boss and employee, not despite our social differences, but because you made me a better man. Because with you, I learned what true trust is." Sophia tried to resist, but the love she felt for him was stronger than the pain. "I love you too," she confessed. "Even when I was angry, even when you hurt me, I never stopped loving you." Nicholas kissed her right there on the street of Queensbridge, without caring about the curious neighbors or the fact that he was wearing a $3,000 suit in a place where the average income was 2 minimum wages. None of that mattered anymore. When they broke apart, Sophia smiled through her tears. "What now?" "Now we start over," Nicholas said. "The right way this time, without secrets, without fears, without letting other people define what we can or cannot be." "The obstacles still exist," Sophia reminded. "We're from different worlds." "Then let's create our own world," Nicholas replied. "A world where what matters is the love we feel for each other." 6 months later, Sophia graduated from law at a private university, where Nicholas had secured a full scholarship for her. The twins were in their junior year of high school at a private school, and Mrs. Ferreira had the best medical treatment money could buy. But more important than all of that was the fact that Nicholas and Sophia had built a relationship based on mutual trust and respect. He learned to value her simplicity and honesty, while she discovered that she could navigate his world without losing her essence. On Sophia's graduation day, Nicholas went up on stage when she was called to receive her diploma. In front of the entire audience, he knelt and asked for her hand in marriage. "Sophia Ferreira," he said, his voice echoing through the auditorium, "you taught me that the true value of a person is not in the money they possess or the social position they occupy, but in the integrity of their character. Will you spend the rest of your life teaching me to be a better man?" Sophia looked at him, then at the audience, where her brothers, her mother, and even Ricky were. They were all smiling, cheering for her happiness. "Yes," she replied, and her voice was firm and clear. "I will." When Nicholas placed the ring on her finger, Sophia thought about the night it all began, when she was just an invisible cleaning lady who found some documents by chance. Today, she was a law graduate, engaged to the man she loved, and more importantly, she had proven to herself that she deserved all the happiness in the world. Love had overcome not only external obstacles, but also internal ones. Sophia learned to believe in her own worth, and Nicholas learned to trust again. Together, they discovered that when two people truly love each other, it doesn't matter where they came from or where they're going. What matters is that they make the journey together. And so, the invisible cleaning lady, who considered herself unworthy, became the queen in the heart of the CEO, proving that true love sees no classes, but only the beauty of the human soul.